Hello! We are here on the gathering room. Yes, we are. Is that picture crooked? It's not. It looks crooked, but it's not. It's not in real life. So I'm just here in my room. Oh, putting things on. Do not disturb. Oh, yes. We don't want anyone disturbing us for the next half hour. And soon I will say the thing, the magical thing that starts everything off. And that magical thing is, welcome to the gathering room. I'm Martha Beck. I did it. So hey there, we have more than 100 people. It's off to the races. Behind me, you see my new thing. I had this delightful philodendron here, and it was growing tendrils, so I thought, well, it'll climb up the wall. I'll give it little things to make it climb up the wall. Then I got excited and bought another philodendron, which is taking over my house. And I found out that once I started to let it grow up the wall, it won't stop without ripping off paint. It's a whole debacle. Anyway, that's why I'm sitting in front of what looks like Little Shop of Horrors. And if the plants throttle me before the end of this broadcast, please tell the police, or no, that's a bad move right now. Tell my family that I love them. Okay, so today I wanted to talk about the source of courage, but it is a trick title. See, this last week I had one of my usual regular scheduled calls with my Wayfinder coaches. Now on this broadcast, it's a Facebook broadcast, so I can get questions in the text. But because these people were Wayfinder coaches, they get to have Zoom interactions with me, so I can actually go back and forth and coach them a little. So there's somebody who's almost always here on the gathering room, Donna Keel. I didn't say any names today, and I kind of miss it. Probably go back to that next week. Suggestion for the podcast. Anyway, Donna asked a question about how to encounter. She's getting really heightened awareness because of the Black Lives Matter movement, and she wants social justice. And then she encounters people and institutions that are really, really racist and sexist and all those things. And what she said was, I need to get to the point where I can not be angry and I can just move toward them with love and just nothing but gentleness in my heart and calm them. Well, because I had a chance to talk back and forth with Donna, we located the place where she starts to get angry. And at that point, a judgment comes in that says, you must not act on anger. Now, this is a very common theme in our culture. It's a common theme among anyone whose anger might upset the system. So if there's a teenager in a family where people keep secrets and the teenager starts telling secrets, it's a really big threat to the system and everybody gets upset. No anger, no anger. So the teenager is told, no anger, no anger. I remember when I was briefly doing a stint teaching while I finished my doctorate, I taught at the Mormon-run Brigham Young University for a while. And one of my students there was an art major, and she put up this beautiful, she was getting her master's in fine arts, and she put up this amazing show of paintings. And they were all people, pictures of people, paintings of people. And she was denied her master's degree because of this, her art show, which was brilliant. And she went to them and she said, my art is as good as anyone's. Is it because there are some nudes here and the Mormon authorities don't want the nude body? And she was already with an argument that says, you believe you're made in the image of God. What's wrong with the human body? And they said, no. It's not because the women in the paintings were nude. It was because they looked angry. We cannot have that. So there's this big push to not be angry because anger upsets the system. Now, this is absolutely rational when you've encountered anger with no wisdom. I put out a meme yesterday that said, in the absence of wisdom, anger only destroys. In the presence of wisdom, Anger only creates. Use your anger wisely and you could create a whole new world. And I got some comments that were like, yeah, you go. And then I got a bunch that were like, anger is never right. Not ever. So that's a very common voice. But here's what I want you to think about. Audre Lorde, the great African-American feminist, said, our task is to transform the anger that is affliction into the anger that is determination to bring about change. So what I told Donna, once I finally got her on a back and forth, is I said, you've been vilifying your anger and it's drained you of courage. And because Donna is super smart and she's a well-trained coach and all this stuff, she saw through the cultural screen really quickly, or at least it seemed so. Maybe she can like shout out in the chats and say if it still lasted, but she was like, got it. So here's the source of courage. The source of courage is the natural resistance response that comes when injustice is occurring. So there are two circumstances. One is where something that is absolutely necessary is being taken from a being. And the other one is when something absolutely intolerable is being imposed on a being. In those two circumstances, the natural response of all beings, as far as I know, even plants seem to have this reaction, believe it or not. You can look up the research on that. It's fascinating. But they have an anger reaction. We all have an anger reaction that says, that's not right, that's not fair, that's not good, stop right there. And that's as much as it is. It's not, I will kill you all because I'm so angry I want to destroy the world like Godzilla. That kind of anger comes from repressed anger. It becomes, well, I call it the exploding doormat. You repress and repress and repress your anger until the pressure is so intense that you can't hold it and it blows. And this is when you get people having rage attacks, abusing each other, attacking each other, being horribly violent. This is not a healthy use of anger. It's a natural response to repressing anger that is determination to bring about change. So I asked Ro, our wonderful incognito badger, if she would please put up a link to a video that I love, and it's called Watching an Experienced Golden Retriever Mother Calm Her 8-Week-Old Puppies. And it is a masterclass in the right use of anger. So this dog comes in, and she goes willingly. There are all these puppies. The link is up now. You can check it out later. But it's quite, it's like 5 minutes long, and it deserves to be watched. So just save it for later. So she goes in with her puppies. Now, golden retrievers love puppies. Of all breeds of dog, golden retrievers are the most puppy-loving that I've ever seen. I mean, they love their puppies. So she goes in there, and she's got like nips out to here from all the nursing. And so she's got that dangle-down nip situation that you see with nursing dogs. And she goes in there, and these 8-week-old puppies, and there are like 10 of them, they just mob her, and they're like biting at her undercarriage. They're trying to get themselves some milk. And she sets about making boundaries. She gives what my friend Boyd Varty in South Africa calls the growl of harmony. He's watched lionesses do it when the cubs are in danger or when they're endangering the group. And it means business. It's not like, kids, honestly, mommy's feeling a little tired. It's like, no, back. Watch this golden retriever mother. And the puppies go, what? And then they sit down and they get calm. And if you've ever trained a dog, I did this with my children. I never, ever wanted to appear angry to them. And what happened is I didn't create enough boundary to make them feel safe, right? So they had to grow up. They never did anything bad. They're all 3 amazing kids, just they showed up that way. But I didn't give them a solid sense of boundaries. If you've read Brene Brown's work, which I recommend you do, she talks about a massive study they did where they looked at all these dynamics of personality, and one of them was compassion. And what they found was that there were certain people who had extraordinarily high levels of compassion. They were what we call outliers. They were so compassionate. And so they went back into the data and they said, what's creating this incredible compassion? Do they meditate? Are they vegan? Or like, why? And what they found was one correlation. The people that were out of the box compassionate had the highest, most solid boundaries of anybody by far. So it's like they know how to do the growl of harmony. They know how to say, nuh-uh, nope, no way. So for me, I just want to say the George Floyd killing, the murder of George Floyd, if you can watch that, and I've not watched it all the way through, I've not been able to, but I've watched him asking, please stop murdering me. I am actively dying. Please, sir, he says to the white cop, will you please let me breathe? And the white cop does not. And that's what happens when people are robbed of any opportunity to express their anger. If somebody is actively murdering you, you're gonna feel angry, and you should. If somebody's actively murdering George Floyd, you're gonna feel angry, and you should. Anger is the immune response of the psyche. It's like fever. The body takes in a virus that, like COVID or the common cold, and it's going to kill the organism, your body, so it raises the temperature to burn that virus out. It's going to create an environment where the virus can't survive in a high temperature, and that most viruses die when we get fevers and burn them out. Anger is like that. Something's introduced into the society, into your small society, your family, whatever, your couplehood, or the whole society of the entire planet. And you look at it and you say, that is infectious, that is toxic, that is wrong. And you will feel anger unless you are immune suppressed. Not feeling anger, not acting on anger is like having emotional AIDS. It's like having societal AIDS. No immune response to injustice, no immune response to toxicity. But if you read some of these great writers in the Black Lives Matter movement and everything around it, they are masterpieces of using anger without destruction. So what can you do when you're angry about something like that? Do you go and burn down a police station? No. But you may get a sign and write down what you think and go out and carry it around. That's making something. It is not destroying something. Then the authorities get angry. They come in, they tear gas people, they arrest people, they drag people off in unmarked vans. Okay, so then some people watched that and they got angry. And did they go and burn down buildings? Did they murder people? They did not. They went and formed a line of mothers, joined hands, many in tear gas masks, joined hands so that the protesters could peacefully march and the police couldn't get to them without going through the line of mothers. That's the growl of harmony. And that is actually, it's not a masculine trait exclusively. It's very much the divine, what I call the divine feminine. The ability to say, look, I'm the one providing the milk for all you puppies. So, you'll learn this, sorry guys out there, if you're about to hear a little, maybe TMI about the female experience, but you have a baby, they give you a baby, they say feed the baby, and you're like, feed it what? And they just look at your chest and you're like, what? And then sure enough your chest starts cooking, producing food, and the baby needs it. Now here's what I learned. I tried to do everything for the baby. I didn't want the baby, my first daughter, Kat, I remember trying to feed her. She was born in the middle of February in Boston, freezing cold. I'm up, night after night, I'm trying to feed her. Nothing was happening. I didn't have any milk. And then someone taught me, no, feel how that feels wrong to you. Does it make you a little bit angry that you have to get up and get up and get up in the cold and nothing good is happening? And I was like, I guess I'm not mad at my baby. And she was like, no, but is there anger in the situation? Is there something wrong? And I was like, well, I am completely exhausted and I would really like some, comfort. And she said, get the softest blanket you have, wrap it around you, get a cup of hot tea. Meanwhile, the baby's crying. get yourself a cup of tea. It'll only take a few minutes. Sit down, get as comfortable as you possibly can. Nourish yourself, put the TV on, put on soothing music or whatever. Then get your baby and cuddle the baby once you're okay. And I did that, and I never had another problem being there for, as a nursing mother for any of my kids, because I had learned to take the anger that was affliction, even though it was tiny, and turn it into the anger that was determination to bring about change, which was to supply those who've been deprived with comfort and to remove the whatever is oppressing them so that they can be free. So I said this to Donna, and because she's a coach and because we were coaching together, she was like, got it! And I cannot wait to see what Donna does, because she often her comments are about, how do I get past my anxiety? How do I get past my fear? Well, anger is the immune response that pushes us so hard that even when we're afraid to try to bring about change because they're going to get angry at us, they're going to come at us, we will stand between the bad guys and the good guys, or whatever you want to say, between the destroyer and the creator, and we will give the growl of harmony, and we will not harm anyone, but we will not allow injustice to continue unopposed. So that's what I have to say about that, and I would love to take any questions that may have arisen in your brains. So, the fabulous Badger is putting up things. Donna, yeah! So Donna says, and I have to speak for you here, it was as if Martha opened a door that had been shut and locked my entire life. And here's the thing about Donna, she can take that one moment and go kapow, and like implement, because she knows a little bit about breaking free from culture and going to her true nature, because that's what we do as Wayfinder coaches. So Donna, thank you for responding. I'm so happy that it's hanging in there, and you are going to be such a force now. Wow. Okay, so Gail says, what if I feel my anxiety stems from not expressing my anger? That's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. If you have anger and you don't express it, it turns into one of two things: sadness, depression, or anxiety, fear. So you got your feeling states: mad, sad, glad, and scared. If you don't get mad, you also don't get glad. So what you've got left is sad and scared. So if you have anxiety, depression, or anxiety and depression, as I had the whole time I was growing up, you know that the role of anger is not being played out in a healthy way in your life. So then you sit down and you say, okay, I want to scream and yell and pound people. I know that's not creative. That's sheer destruction. And that is not anger used with wisdom. That is just random violence. What I will do is sit and say, what makes me angry and what could be better, and what's one step I could take to make the world better in this way. And then you say, okay, I'm going to do that. Like, okay, so I left Mormonism, sexually abused as a child, and I, as a sociologist working there at BYU, I had dozens and dozens and dozens of young women coming to me talking about child sexual abuse. And I did research on it as a sociologist, and I thought, oh, this is epidemic. This is actually it's very prevalent in that culture. So did that make me angry? Well, yeah. Being sexually abused, if you've got a healthy psyche, makes you feel angry, makes you want to say no. So was I angry about other people being victimized? Yes, I was. Did I try to appeal to the authorities? Yes, I did. My darling Karen Gertis and I actually wrote a paper about it and published it in a peer-reviewed journal, and got threats from people, in that church. So I was like, I don't want to burn anything down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait until there's no more unquiet in me. I'm going to find justice in myself, what I think was just. And then I'm going to write the most loving book I possibly can about why this happens, how it's the perpetrators are hurting so much, the mothers are hurting so much, the whole culture is hurting so much. And that's the book I wrote. And in one paragraph, I talked about when I had physical anger in my body because I was having physical flashbacks of being sexually abused. I would go outside and there was a tree that had died, in my yard, and I chopped the branches off the tree and chopped them up into firewood, and then I put them in the fireplace and I burned them, and that was my anger. I took it out on that tree. And over and over and over, reporters and Mormons and people who were sort of attacking me during the book tour for that would point out that one paragraph and say, "You are nothing but just a filthy fountain of rage." And I'd be like, there are 330 pages of love in that book, and a paragraph about how I used my anger in such a way that it would never harm a human being, and that it could be used as a fire to warm instead of a fire to destroy. So you will be accused of rocking the boat if you express your anger. That's why it's so hard to find the courage to do it. And so, Gail, back to your question, if you have anxiety and it's from not expressing your anger, you need to express the anger, but make sure you do it wisely. Talk to a friend, talk to a coach, become a coach, do whatever it takes, so that you know how to transform the anger that is affliction to either you or to anyone else. Transform that anger into determination, that is, into the determination to bring about change. And then you go march. You think those mothers standing in a line with the tear gas people aren't afraid? Of course they're afraid. But they've got courage because it angers them that peaceful protesters are being tear gassed and arrested and dragged away. So their anger and their commitment to justice is what got them past what I'm sure was incredible fear. So Emily says, I feel anger as a result of boundaries being crossed. Yes? Yes! 100%. Either something is being deprived from you that you need, which is a boundary between you and your needs, or something's being pushed on you, like a sexual assault, that is absolutely wrong. And both of those require the setting of boundaries. Like, I take my stand here. I have the right to protest peacefully, and you don't. Your right to swing your fist ends where my nose begins, and I'll do a growl of harmony if that's what it takes. But I won't destroy. I will only create. So Lori says, I feel the anger, but lately I find that I'm wanting to ignore it because I feel so helpless in the face of the systemic problems and my desire to change the world. Thoughts? Absolutely. Go into creation. Like, I'm going to repeat my little meme. In the absence of wisdom, anger only destroys. In the presence of wisdom, anger only creates. So, yeah, it's huge. Like, what can I do? I'm one little person. Okay. Find one thing you can do. And it doesn't have to be public. And it doesn't, I mean, for me, most of it has been reading books. And I've been talking to people, and I go on social media, and I read the news, and I watch the news. But I'm a bookie. I'm a book person. So I've been reading these books and just getting, so I do have to put them down sometimes because the rage at what was done to people of color in our country is so much bigger than I even knew. And let me tell you what white privilege is. It's the ability to put it down and walk away and rest for a while, but I still have to do that. Anyway, what can I do to keep making things better? Learn a little more. I hired a diversity consultant. She taught me, well, there are two of them. This last week, we met with them in my company. They taught me things, and they taught me about setting boundaries. It was the last thing I expected, but they were like so wise. Like, go on social media, follow somebody who's an influence maker, read Untamed, do whatever fires you up, lights you up, and helps you feel like you're moving forward. And it will change the world. The power of one transformed heart is immense. You just don't know how many ways it's going to ripple out. So Monica says, what is the relationship between boundaries and courage? And here it is. If you have no boundaries, people will take what's yours and they will use you up to get whatever they want. A boundary is where you say, I'm not going to allow myself to be used this way, and you can't come any closer. Now at that point, you're going to get pressure. Like, look at the golden retriever mom. Her puppies are like, food, 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 mommy, 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 food, food, food. And she's like, boundaries, boundaries, boundaries. So when you set a boundary, this is what typically happens with people-pleasing folks like us, because most of y'all are people-pleasers like me, right? Because we want to save the world and be good to everyone and have cuddle puddles and just love. So what typically happens to us is we say, I've painted these beautiful pictures, and you say that I can't have my master's degree because the women there look angry. Okay, I'll go paint some pictures of women who don't look angry. That's not setting the boundary, and it will create the exploding doormat effect. Every time you agree to your own oppression, the oppression of your truth, the oppression of your expression of self, anything that feels like a violation, if you don't say no, then you're gonna go to depression, you're gonna go to anxiety, and the anger will start to build, and it eventually will build until it explodes. And usually it explodes at your child or the dog or something that can't fight back, because it's based on no courage. If you don't set boundaries, you end up spraying destructive anger on the innocent. So the courage that is related to boundaries is when you know your boundaries are being crossed, when that friend has borrowed $1,000 one too many times without paying it back, or whatever it is, or your parents have insulted your hairstyle, or whatever it is. Like when you feel like no, then you give the growl of harmony. You say, you know what, that's not working for me, let's not do that. I've watched my own kids do that, because I would say things that were unconsciously racist from my generation, and they'd say, Mom, don't do that. It's not good, it's not funny, stop it. I didn't even know. I was like, that's the way people talk. And they were like, yeah, that's the problem. And they're right. They're right. And they set that boundary. And because I'm used to what we teach our coaches to do is be willing to be corrected. So I started learning once my kids started to teach me. But if I had yelled at them, if I'd tried to oppress them, I hope they would have either pushed back hard or taken off. Set a boundary, like either I'm going to say no to you until you listen to me, or I'm out of here. Either way, it's a boundary. It's either fight or flight, and I don't mean you punch anyone, and I don't mean you abandon anyone. You create the space that is a boundary that allows you to proceed in health. You put the blanket around yourself with the growl of harmony so that everyone gets the nourishment that is meant to come from you. Anger holds that boundary, and courage is what you use to keep the boundary in place even when people push it. And they will, that's their job. There's a great quote from Melody Beatty that says, it is impossible to set a boundary and take care of someone's feelings at the same time. So it's not possible. And most codependent people take care of other people's feelings and set no boundaries and end up in a rage. And it is not good for the relationship either. It's bad for everyone. All right, Jessica says, I would love to learn to respond to my anger and anxiety without such a furious physical response. Can we growl our harmony more fluidly without the shaking and racing heart? Actually, no. The reason you're having a surge of energy is that your body is switching from its parasympathetic nervous system to the sympathetic nervous system, which says fight or flee. Once that happens, your system floods with adrenaline and cortisol and glucocorticoids and other fight or flight hormones. In women, interestingly, also you get a flood of hormones that make you want to take care of people. So men under stress, their hormones make them want to run or fight. Women under stress, our hormones make us want to run, fight, but also make sure everyone has a sweater and a sandwich, which really puts us in a pickle a lot of the time. It's a weird brew of hormones, and they didn't even think to research it until I was like an adult. Anyway, it's going to make you want to run about. And what you should do is run about. I chopped down that tree for a reason. There was so much anger in my body after being raped that pushing back had to happen or I couldn't heal. One of the ways animals always react after they've been attacked by a predator and escaped is that they shake. Sometimes they shake deliberately, sometimes they shake for hours. If you put a horse under anesthesia and operate on it, comes out of the anesthesia, the horse will shake and shake. They have to put him in rubber walled stalls because the shaking is so violent. And it's scary to us. But what that is the body incorporating the trauma and healing from trauma. And if we hold ourselves physically still, because that's another thing we do, we don't fight and we don't flee, so we freeze. And that freeze becomes post-traumatic stress disorder and can last the rest of your life. You'll be frozen and unable to set boundaries, and then you're just a sitting duck and you don't make anything better. But weirdly, read the book Trauma Release Exercises by David Cicchetti. I forgot his last name. I'm going to have to put that up in the post. And there's another book called Waking the Tiger, and it's by Peter, but I don't know his last name either. But Waking the Tiger. They're both about the physical shaking that is necessary to incorporate the somebody trespassing our boundaries in any way. Sometimes it's just little, sometimes it's big. That shaking should be allowed. It's part of it. And as that goes away, it'll fade after a while. You will find that the anger that is affliction starts to sort of boil down and condense into intention to bring about change. And that is power. Gandhi said wherever he found something that made him angry, he kept it and stored it and used it as fuel so that when he was afraid, he would still go forward. So that's the source of courage, folks. And I bet it's not what you expected, but it's a good thing to know in these times. And I hope that we all do it, because anger in the presence of wisdom is courage, and it does nothing but create a better world. I love you. I'm so glad you're here. And I have to say goodbye. See you next week on The Gathering Room. Thanks for being here.